Today we will be sharing an overview of the partnership between Second Nature and the University of New Hampshire, as well as walking through UNH's new version of the carbon calculating platform. Next slide. So I'm Steve Muzzy, Climate Program Senior Manager at Second Nature, and I'm joined by Jen Andrews, who is the Sustainability Director at the Sustainability Institute at the University of New Hampshire. Can you say hello, Jen?
Hi, everyone.
Hi. So I'm going to begin today with providing a brief overview of the partnership between Second Nature and UNH, and then Jen will reveal and present on SIMAP. We are aiming to leave plenty of time at the end for questions. However, you can ask go to function there. Next slide. Before we get started, I just want to do a quick thank you to our sponsors who support us and signatories in meeting our climate action goals. So thank you to those listed here. Next slide. So we are very excited to partner with UNH to support the launching of the Sustainability Indicator Management and Analysis Platform, or SIMAP for short. I want to recognize that SIMAP is more than just a carbon calculating tool, but today's presentation is mostly focused on the carbon functionality. But if there is time, Jen, maybe. Yes?
I think it didn't start recording. The broadcast wasn't started. I think Devin wasn't able to start it, so I think I need to push the button.
So no one's heard anything yet?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry about that. Let's push start broadcast. I guess I have to, usually it works when Devin pushes the button, but I don't know why it's different this time.
It's saying this session is being recorded.
We are recording. The attendees are just on hold, so we just need to start the broadcast. So okay, you're ready to go.
Okay, the broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. Today, we will be sharing an overview of the partnership between Second Nature and the University of New Hampshire and walking through UNH's new version of the carbon calculating platform. Next slide, please. So I'm Steve Muzzy. I'm the Climate Program Senior Manager at Second Nature, and I'm joined by Jen Andrews, who is the Sustainability Director at the Sustainability Institute at the University of New Hampshire.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Thanks, Jen. I'm going to provide a brief overview of the partnership between Second Nature and UNH, and then Jen will reveal and present on SIMAP. We will leave plenty of time for questions at the end. That is our goal, but please ask questions at any time by using the GoToWebinar control panel and selecting the questions option there. Before I get started, you can go back a slide to the, before I get started, just want to thank our sponsors who support us and signatories in meeting climate action goals. So thank you to those listed here. And now you can go to the next slide. So we are very excited to partner with UNH to support the launching of the Sustainability Indicator Management and Analysis Platform, or SIMAP for short. I want to recognize upfront that SIMAP is much more than just a carbon calculating tool, although today's presentation is mostly going to focus on the carbon functionality. But if there is time, Jen will may be able to talk about the nitrogen calculating features. Next slide. So just a quick overview of our partnership and the goals that we have outlined. So we have 4 key goals. The first being we want to support the most commonly used carbon calculator for campuses and signatories. More than 90% of signatories have used the carbon calculating tools that are now managed by the University of New Hampshire. So from the campus carbon calculator to carbon map, and now moving to the newest version of SIMAP. Our second goal is to share data. So this is something those of you in the field have requested for a long time. There are multiple reporting programs and platforms, and we are working hard to share data across digital databases here. So specifically the carbon outputs, but we are looking at more than that. I'll talk about more about that in a bit. So our third goal is to coordinate outreach and technical support. So this is a key example of communicating to you how we're working together and how we will continue to work together to support your needs in regard to the technical assistance with SIMAP and with the reporting platform. And the fourth goal of this partnership is to help in reducing the cost to signatories to use the fee-for-service portion or tier 1 of the SIMAP tool. Next slide. So data sharing. We are in the process of finalizing these the data sharing logistics. SIMAP has already included a reports tab, as you see here, for Second Nature and for signatories that will share carbon outputs. We are also looking to share other aligned data fields, such as institutional data, like enrollment and building square footage, among others. So the details are still being worked out on how we're going to do this, but we will provide updates and guidance when this function is operational. But that should be by November, and then plenty of time for the reporting period for 2018. So as you can see again here, there's the reports tab that already has Second Nature data being displayed, but this feature has the capacity to include other data for other reporting programs. And I'm sure Jen will share more on this feature in her presentation. Next slide. So in regard to the data sharing, I just want to be clear that the sharing of data doesn't complete your annual progress evaluation in the Second Nature platform. Signatories and you will still need to log into the Second Nature reporting platform to verify your SIMAP data, complete the data fields that are still empty or not included in the data sharing, and then finally you'll have to publicly submit the report through our platform. Next slide. So cost, this is a breakdown of the version of SIMAP that will be launching very soon. And so for tier 1, the first level of pay for features is we will provide, Second Nature will provide a 40% discount for signatories. So it will be $210 for signatories to get this tier 1 functionality, and it's $350 for non-signatories or retail price. So that includes the functionality. You get 1 year of data storage, but you'll be able to export your data so you can keep it and archive it. You have import and export functionality for importing your inputs, and then of course pulling out your exports. Support level advanced, any technical assistance or talking through some of the features of SIMAP, UNH will provide that assistance. Emission factors are customizable, and then a very nice feature is to have data review by the University of New Hampshire Sustainability Institute. Next slide. So with that, this is the most exciting part of this presentation, is to get a look at the new tool, and I'm going to hand it over to Jen here to walk us through it.
Thank you so much, Steve. And thank you everyone for being on the webinar and being with us sort of through this entire journey, not only sort of putting SIMAP together, but the kind of journey that, you know, the Second Nature climate leadership commitments embody, and the work that you all are doing, that we've all been doing over the years to be leaders on climate change on our campuses. I am really excited to be able to share, to give you all a sneak peek of SIMAP today. We've been working for a couple of years on it now, and it's exciting to be getting close to unveiling it. So you guys are the first to see it publicly beyond those of us here at UNH and those who have done beta testing for us. Let's go to the next slide, please. Before we kind of get into the tool, I want to just take quickly a step back and kind of ground us all in the why. Why are we developing yet another tool or a new tool? Why is this important? Why are we excited to share it with you? Why do we think it will help advance the field? And the first is that, which isn't on the slide because in some ways I guess I felt it went without saying, but we've always worked to respond to user input and feedback and requests and to try to move the goalposts in terms of supporting campus climate action. And so we feel like this is the next way to do that, and campus leadership on sustainability broadly. And so one important way to do that is begin to capture a range of environmental impacts, not only those from climate change, by adding nitrogen, which we'll talk a tiny bit more about in a minute. And to be able to do that using a goal tool instead of yet another sort of reporting and inventorying exercise. And the beautiful thing about carbon and nitrogen is that they really lend themselves to being integrated in a tool, in one single tool, which again, we'll talk a bit more about in a minute. As we've done this, as you all know, if you've used the Campus Carbon Calculator or Carbon Map before, we've always tried to and worked hard to come up with the greenhouse gas accounting and reporting protocols as they've evolved over time. And so this gives us a chance to continue to do that, to make sure we're kind of keeping up with best practices and helping drive best practices. As Steve said, it allows us to integrate with other reporting platforms, which as the person who does UNH's inventory and STARS report and all of our other reporting here, I can appreciate that is no small thing. Partly this move to this new online platform for which there's an annual license fee allows us to ensure UNH's continued ability to provide the tool for the field. We've been working for a while to figure out how to make this sustainable, make sure that we can continue to keep it best in class, make sure that we can continue to support it and do an even better job supporting it. And this is the way that we are working to do that. And so we're excited about the way that this is going to allow us to continue to be a resource and to build and grow. And we also are excited about the potential to with this sort of aggregated data and with a little bit more data quality control, to make this available as a resource around energy and climate and nitrogen trends for colleges and universities who are tracking this stuff. So we see real research potential as well. Can we go to the next slide, please? A tiny bit of background. So what is this tool? We've said it's an integrated carbon and nitrogen tool. There's an animation on the slide. Do you mind clicking? I should have thought about that. Thank you. So a little bit of history. Very briefly, I think many of you know that the Campus Carbon Calculator, the Excel version of the tool that this is all based on, was developed originally at the University of New Hampshire in 2001, working with the nonprofit Cleaner Cool Planet. We iterated that Excel version in around 2010, working with Sightlines. We went to a web version, Carbon Map, and it is now used by thousands of institutions, mostly colleges and universities, but others as well. That's on the carbon side. On the nitrogen side, the nitrogen footprint tool for institutions was developed in 2009 at the University of Virginia. That's an Excel-based tool, which has been piloted over the last, 8 years, is now being used by 20 institutions. There's a lot of great research that has come out of that and a lot of great work. I want to say too that we'll go, for those of you that are interested, the nitrogen footprint does allow you to really talk and think about the campus footprint in a way that's broader than carbon, and it has the benefit not only of being an important environmental indicator that that a sustainable campus should be paying attention to, but also having impacts that in some ways can be more local, can be more tangible, can be less politicized. And so The beauty of carbon and nitrogen integrated is that if you're doing work to reduce your carbon footprint, you're doing work to reduce your nitrogen footprint, usually, and vice versa. And so it becomes an important additional argument or motivating program, I guess, to do the kind of sustainability work you want to do on your campuses anyway. So those of you that are interested in the nitrogen piece, we're going to be doing a sort of more in-depth overview of the tool, and we'll go into more depth around the nitrogen footprint also by webinar next week, October 11th from 12 to 1, and we'll record that. So stay tuned for that if you want more details on that front. Next slide, please. One other quick bit of background information before we show you the tool itself, and that is just about sort of what to expect with SIMAP and the timeline. We expect to be publicly launching the new site next week, and showing it and promoting it over the next couple of months. We have a session at the ASHE conference that will be both the basic and the tier 1 functionality that Steve talked about before. In January of this year, we are going to stop supporting the Excel version of the Campus Carbon Calculator and the online carbon map tool. We'll be working with campuses who are using those tools to move their data over, but we can't continue to put resources in supporting multiple tools, and that was one of the reasons for moving to this one integrated tool. And so come January, we will stop support of those tools, but there'll be a lot of resources available to help you shift in the interim. Over next calendar year, we're going to be working on an additional level of functionality for SIMAP, a tier 2 level of functionality, which among other things will include some solutions modeling, the projections and solutions functionality that's in the current Excel version of the Campus Carbon Calculator that allows you to look at mitigation strategies and scenarios. We'll also be adding the ability to look at your complete scope 3 footprint, not just the sort of subset of scope 3 things that most of us report now and that you're required to report for second nature. So for those that are interested in having that sort of complete scope 3 footprint, that will be an option. And in the future, moving forward, one of the things we're excited about in terms of SIMAP is being able to add additional footprints. Phosphorus is one we're looking at, for example, a potential other, water is one we've been talking about. So potentially being able to integrate other aspects of the campus carbon footprint into SIMAP as well. So that's an overview of what to expect. And now, very excitingly, I think we can move to looking at the tool itself. Can we go to the next slide, please? Great. So when you go to the URL once the tool is launched next week, this is the login screen you will see. You'll be able to set up an account using the sort of toolbar over on the left-hand side. Once you've set up that account, you'll see navigation across the top, which I'm going to show you in a slide in a minute. The way that the tool is set up now, that basic functionality, people can log in, set up an account, put in data, get results, try it all out for up to 2 months for free using that basic functionality. After it, well, in the interim, what will happen is that when you are on the account page, once you're logged in, you'll see a little note that looks like the note down on the bottom of the screen here. It tells you your 2-month free access expires on whatever date it expires on, 2 months from when you first set up your account. And then as a second nature signatory, you're also going to get this little note that gives you a coupon code that will sort of implement your 40% discount when you go to the shopping cart, when you go to pay for it. So you'll see that on the account page after you've created your account. You can go to the next slide, please. And once you log in, what you'll see is this navigation across the top. And so the sort of first major category of navigation is the sort of account tab. There's a couple different features here. Some of it is basic account management. For example, down the bottom of that submenu, you see manage users. You can have multiple users all associated with one account. So if you've got interns or staff or faculty who are working with you on it, you can set them up so that they have access all to the same account and you can be working collaboratively within it. There's a notebook feature so you can document whatever you sort of need globally in terms of data sources or assumptions or methodology or notes for improvement next time, whatever you want to do, that's what the notebook feature is for. And then there are a couple of other elements here on the account tab. If we go to the next slide, we'll see a screenshot of the institution page. And so this is important background information. This is just, you can sort of see the top of the page here. Some of this will look familiar. We worked really hard to try to align all of the data collection in terms of background stuff with the types of information Second Nature is already collecting and or the types of information ASHE is already collecting, so that again, we can sort of share that as part of the data share if you haven't already entered it, just to reduce redundancy and also to make sure that we're kind of aligning what we're asking you with what other people are asking you, so we're all sort of more cohesive. Two key things on this institution tab that are going to be important for your actual inventory results later. One is your zip code, because of course that establishes your eGrid region, which is used to calculate your electricity emissions. And then the fiscal year is potentially important, especially if you're entering data not in sort of annual, not as one annual data point for each category, but if you're entering data monthly, for example, it's important for the tool to know when your fiscal year starts and ends. So those are kind of key points on the institution tab. And then if we go to the next slide, you'll see also under this account menu, there are data entry opportunities that will look familiar to you because they are the same categories that whether you used the Campus Carbon Calculator or Carbon Map we asked you about in order to normalize your emissions. So there's, again, questions about your populations, your in terms of full-time equivalent students or staff or faculty, your amount of square footage and your budgets. A note on the populations, just again to kind of reiterate that we are really trying very hard to be aligned and consistent with other programs. And so on the populations, we switched what we were asking you for to align with ASHE's weighted campus user calculation or data entry fields. So hopefully that will be a little bit more consistent for users now. Next slide, please. I'm skipping over from the account tab on the top to the data management tab, because especially for first-time users, this is potentially really important because this is where you can do things like import your data, either from previous versions of the Excel Campus Carbon Calculator, or from zip files that we will export for Carbon Map users upon request, and then you can import them into SIMAP. So it'll be sort of two steps, but pretty turnkey. One thing we'll talk a bit about more in a second is that with the addition of nitrogen, one pretty cool addition in terms of the categories of emissions that SIMAP is tracking is now you can get the footprint of your purchased food, both the carbon footprint and the nitrogen footprint. And so there's a data entry template, I guess I would say, for food, which for folks that have been piloting the nitrogen footprint calculator, they're familiar with that already. And it might also make for more streamlined data entry for those that haven't already done it, but that are interested in doing those food footprint calculations. The other thing that I will just note here is that in a minute you'll see the data entry screens, and we've worked hard to make them as kind of user-friendly and streamlined as possible, but we definitely have heard from beta testers that some folks really just like the kind of Excel type experience where you can sort of enter all of your data in a table and see all the different years across all the different categories in one place. And so one thing that we will have very soon is the ability to basically take those input sheets that those of you that have used the Campus Carbon Calculator in the past are used to using, and just enter your data in them as you have before and import those into SIMAP as well. So if you don't want to use the actual data entry forms, which you'll see in a minute, in the tool, you'll be able to use Excel as a sort of data collection mechanism and then import them that way. I should note too that the other things that you see on this data management tab, the export feature, for example, that again is tier 1 functionality. So that's functionality for folks who have paid the user fee, and it's not the sort of free basic functionality. All right, so that's data import. You can go to the next slide, please. So the next kind of tab and process is around data entry. On any of the, under the data entry tab, what happens is that the sub-navigation over on the left is divided up into scopes in the same way that those of you that have used the Campus Carbon Calculator or Carbon Map in the past are used to seeing them. Those categories names should look really familiar to you. So this screenshot just shows the scope 1, but scope 2 and scope 3 and offsets are all underneath that as well. So when you go to the screen first and you click on, for example, stationary fuels, if you've already entered any data, this is the screen where you're going to see the data you've already entered. If you need to enter data, if you haven't entered data yet, if you're entering it for the first time, what you would do is click on this Enter Data button. And then if we go to the next slide, you'll see pretty much all of the data entry forms look something like this. It asks you for your source. So for example, in the on-campus stationary sources, there'd be a pick list that include coal and natural gas, number 6 and number 2 oil, all those things that you are used to seeing. For stationary sources, there's radio buttons, whether it's cogeneration or not cogeneration. You can put in a date range. So this again allows you to enter data for a year if that's what you are used to doing and want to do, but it also allows you to enter it for a month or a quarter if you've got bills that are monthly or quarterly or something. It allows you to put in your own label for that. If let's say you want to say this is, you know, from this building and this is from that building, or whatever sort of customized label you want. It allows you to enter your data in different units. So depending on what the source is, the pick list of units will be different. You know, it's not going to be the same for coal as it is for natural gas. But if you know, this will cut down the number of unit conversions you have to do if you're sort of used to getting the data on your bill in one form. You no longer have to convert it in order to get it into the format, say, the Excel tool is asking you for. So you pick your unit and you put your quantity in. And then those of you who have used Carbon Map in the past will be familiar with this confidence indicator, which does not change anything in terms of calculations, but it does allow you to sort of put a note to self in terms of data that you feel is like unquestioned or unquestionable versus data that you feel is that you're not so sure about. So it's sort of an indicator to yourself as you're going back and updating, or to others who might be reviewing your data or coming back and updating it the next year to say, oh yeah, this data point is definitely on. So if there's like some discrepancy or something when you're doing the update next year, people will have a sense of, is it because there's an actual discrepancy, or is it because potentially the data you collected last year wasn't as strong as you would like it to be? So that's a user tool. It's not something, again, that affects the calculations per se, but it's a feature that obviously wasn't in the Excel version of the tool. And then down at the very bottom, there's, in every data entry field, there's an optional notes section. So if you have notes specific to a particular piece of data that you want to be able to go back and refer to, there's a space for that. So that's data entry. If we go to the next slide, here are the data entry category lists. Again, these should look really familiar to you. There are just two big differences from Campus Carbon Calculator and or Carbon Map. And those are, first of all, you'll see there's a renewable energy credits data entry option. That's actually going to say just renewable energy. And so there's a screen where you can put in information about the way in which you use renewable energy on your campus, and that mirrors what Second Nature is collecting in its annual progress report. page. So, so that data will be in there, and we'll use it for your inventory. And then the other thing that's sort of new and different that might jump out at you under scope 3 is the menu item for food, because there will be the opportunity to enter data around food and get those calculations as well. And then one other thing you see here on the menus over on the right-hand side is customization. So again, for those that are paying the license fee and have tier 1 functionality, just like in the campus carbon calculator, everything is customizable, and you have the ability to do that. Okay, so that's data entry. Let's go to the next slide, please. Customization, again, this is just a feature for tier 1, under tier 1 functionality. And if you choose it, you click on the customize EX button, it will come up with a table and it will allow you to enter different data in the table. So the table will show you, this is where you can go see what your current emissions factors are. It's also where you can go to change them. Go to the next slide, please. Actually, we're going to skip this one. This is how you would enter new refrigerants if there was a refrigerant that wasn't in the existing list. I think it's important for you all to know that you can do that, but we don't need to go into the how to do that right now. Once you've entered your data, there is a whole section around results, and so you have choices in terms of what results you want to see and how you see them. Carbon and nitrogen, you can choose either or both. You don't have to pick one or the other, you can do both. Report type allows you to sort of see how granular or aggregated you want your results. You just want your total, net emissions or nitrogen footprint. Do you want it broken out by scopes? Do you want it broken out by, stationary versus fleet versus electricity versus commuting, or do you actually want it by individual activities or fuel sources, or do you want it by the type of greenhouse gas? So you've got a lot of flexibility there. You can choose what kind of graph you want, and obviously you can put in your fiscal range, and if you want it normalized, you can normalize it. So once you do all of that and click calculate, you'll get different data views. If we go to the next slide, please. This is an example of a data view of both the carbon and nitrogen footprint, the total footprint view for a 6-year time frame, selecting the bar graph option using just fictional data is just an example. And so you can see the way that the total footprint will show up is you'll see your net. If you have any, carbon sequestration or carbon sinks on your campus that aren't actually offsets, but that you are sort of tracking, like campus forests that are not offsets, but that you want to be able to kind of keep track of, those will show up. And then biogenic emissions will show up in this type of results view as well. If you go to the next slide. Along with the graphs, you'll have it in table format. So of course you'll have all of your values. You won't just have the graphs. So this shows you carbon and nitrogen footprints for that same data view and the kind of breakdown of those. If we go to the next slide, please. So the results tab is available to everyone, and it, is, as you saw, very kind of customizable. The reports tab is a little bit more, I guess I would say packaged, or it's a sort of specific set of data views. And so, excuse me, right now, one of the reports available on the reports page is the annual report that many of you who used the Excel version of the tool are probably familiar with, because I know a lot of folks use that. You can't see it in the screen view, but the table again is underneath. So just like in the annual tab in the campus carbon calculator, you can get the pie chart for your emissions and then the 1 year kind of overview underneath. Again, I do want to point out that the reports function, the results function obviously is available to everyone. The reports function is for tier 1 subscribers. And so this is where you also see, if you go to the next slide, this is where you also see the, okay, here, there's the tables in that view. And And then if we go to the next slide, this is also where you would see the second nature report that Steve showed you a screenshot of earlier. If we go to the next slide, one other important feature of SIMAP that I imagine everyone will be interested in and glad to know exists is that you can export everything that's in SIMAP. So unlike Carbon Map, where you could really only export your results and only kind of broken down by the results view that you selected, in SIMAP, you can export your results and they're all sent to CSV files, so you can slice and dice them any way you want. But you can also export all of the data that you entered into the tool, so all of your input or activity data, and you can also you can also export all of your emissions factors, so that if you want to take them out of the tool, package them in your report in some way, play with them for your own kind of analysis, that's available for you to do and easy for you to do. This all gets exported as CSV files. And again, that's a tier 1 functionality. Next slide, please. All right, so that is a very quick and broad overview of the tool, sneak peek. I hope you all are as excited about it as we are. Again, just to reiterate, kind of timeline and next steps, we will be launching this, I expect next week. We'll be ending support of the Excel and Carbon Map tools in January. We'll be launching tier 2 features in 2018. And we look forward to working with you all for input and feedback on those. One other thing I just want to emphasize, I think, that we haven't really, I meant to talk about earlier and didn't, is that one of many reasons we're really excited about this is that it really is going to allow us to offer more user support than we have been able to in the past. So over the past 9 months now, we've had the benefit of a really awesome and dedicated carbon support staff member, Julia Rothenberg. Many of you may have corresponded with her, and she's been so great about being responsive to questions. I know in the past we haven't necessarily had the resources we wanted to be able to be fully staffed to answer logical questions and functionality questions and to be as responsive as we would have liked. It's been great to be able to move through this process and have more of those resources and have Yulia available to answer more of your questions, and that's a big part of SIMAP moving forward, is having staff in place whose job it is purely to focus on this. So I'm excited about that part too, and I think everybody will benefit from that. So shout out to Yuli for her great work, and look forward to hearing from you all about how we can continue to support you and your work and continue to improve the tool and continue to be a resource for the community. And with that, other than, again, saying a big thank you to Steve and to everyone at Second Nature for being such amazing partners and being such amazing leaders in the field, I'm going to be quiet and open it up to questions.
Excellent. Thank you, Jen. Big thank you to you as well, and UNH and your team there. It has been terrific working with you. I just want to say I love the historical context you gave to the tool and its evolution, and just to see how long it's been around, and and necessary, right? This is a need for doing this work, and so the evolution, the increased functionality, the support that will be provided now, and then the expansion. I also love it being utilized for research and analysis and scholarship. So really tying that into the mission of higher education in general. So Very exciting. So we do have some questions, and let's see, I'll get to them. So the first one was about just this presentation and the availability of it. And yes, it's being recorded and it will be up on the Second Nature website and available to anyone to view. So that's the first question. The next one is about fees. So the SIMAP fee versus the Second Nature dues fee. So they are separate. Second Nature is providing money to UNH to help subsidize the cost for signatories of the SIMAP tool, but they are separate costs. Let's see, Jen, this one is for you. I'm going to try to combine it. Two questions that are similar. So the question is asking about beta testers and how long they have access, and then the question of when is it going to be available, and when should, and asking about the 2-month trial period for tier 1.
Right. Okay.
How that's going to work.
So, so we've had a great group of beta testers, and we're so thankful to them because it's such a better tool than it was when we started beta testing at the beginning of the summer. So what's going to happen is that a couple of things. One is, for anyone who beta tested, if you want to move your data over to the official tool when we launch the official site next week, you need to just let us know and we will move it over. And what will happen is that when it launches next week, I don't know the exact day next week yet, but you know, all the data will sit on the existing site until we move it over and sort of officially, you know, launch. And then everyone will get an email, all the beta testers will get an email letting them know that that is the case, and that if they requested to have their data moved, it's been moved. And at that point, the 2-month sort of free trial period that goes with basic functionality resets. So you'll have 2 months starting from that launch date where your account will just be there and you'll be able to continue to access it without needing to pay for anything. And then, and that date, like in the screenshot that I showed you at the beginning, will, every time you log into your account, you'll be able to see what that date is, and you'll get notifications that are, you know, like, okay, you've got 2 free days left or whatever it is. And then once that 2-month period hits, then you won't be able to, you'll be able to access your account just to pay the upgrade fee, but not to do anything else with your data. So that's how that will work. Hopefully that answers the question.
So I think this is related. There quite a few questions are coming in about carbon map data.
Okay.
Yep. So is that, how would that work? Does that need to be exported, or do you have it that you can?
So,
okay.
Okay. So a couple things about that. One is we did send an email to everyone, all the carbon map users whose addresses we had on file, which should be everyone, because in order to have an account, you have to go with your email address. But it maybe not everybody saw it, outlining the process. And if you want this in writing, you can email me after this webinar and we'll get it to you in writing, so it's clear. But it's also on our website, on the UNH carbon, actually I think it's on the carbon map website, and it's on the UNH campus carbon calculator website too. But the deal is, what we will do is we will do exports from carbon map the 3rd week of the month, the 3rd week of October, the 3rd week of November, the 3rd week of December. So if you're ready to pull your data out and move it over, write us and tell us that you would like your data exported. And the 3rd week of the month, whatever month we're in, you will get that data from us as a series of CSV files. And then those CSV files are the ones you can go to that import page on SIMAP and click the radio button that says, you know, carbon map CSV files, and hit import, and it will take all those data files and upload them to SIMAP and map it to the right place. So won't be automatic in the background, but what will happen, but that way you can set up a new account in SIMAP with whatever contact information you want, whatever users you want, take the data that we sent you, and import it back into SIMAP.
Okay, I got
Hopefully
it. I think I get it. So you have to request the export of carbon map data, and then you have to set up a SIMAP account and then import that back in.
Exactly. And you can write me, or you can write campus, what is our support email? support@campuscarbon.org, and just request that. Or you can follow the link on the Carbon Map website or the UNH calculator website, which is an email address that you can write to request that export.
Great. There's a question about emission factors, the transparency. Are users able to easily access the emission factors and share them?
Yeah, yes. So two things about that. One is the easiest way to share them is on that export, using that export feature that I showed you at the end. One of the things you can choose to export is all of the emissions factors that you are relevant, that were used in the calculation of your footprint. So you can choose to export those, and they'll all be in a CSV file with the heading names that correspond to the sources that you entered data for, and they'll be there. You can also go and look at what they are in the tool itself. So let's try this. Do you mind, Andrea, do you mind going back several slides, and I'll tell you when to stop? It's back a little ways. Okay, stop. I'm sorry, go forward. And so under data entry on the left-hand sub-navigation, these things right now are all next to each other, but in the actual tool, they're stacked on top of each other. So if you scroll down to the bottom of the page, in the sub-navigation, you see emissions factors. And if you were to click on that emissions factors link, what it would do is take you to a page where there would be a table that would show you the emissions factors that were being used. Those are the emissions factors for everything except electricity. Electricity emissions factors are on a separate link, which you also see there under the customization page. And if you want to see the food conversion factor, or the global warming potential being used to roll everything up into metric tons carbon dioxide equivalent, or to do the calculations for any refrigerants that you added, that's where those would be. So you can easily see the emissions factors, whether they're the default ones or the custom, anything that you customize. That's where you would go to look at them in the tool, and then, as I say, you can export them.
Great. So there is a question specifically on the updating of the default emission factors, specifically the questions on purchased electricity or the eGrid factors. So how often will SIMAP be
So we update them. So as soon as we get word that eGrid factors are updated, we will put those updated emissions factors in the tool. One of the features that isn't in the slideshow, but that will be part of SIMAP, is that, and it'll probably be under that account page, is that you will, as we update emissions factors, you'll essentially be using a different version of the tool. And so under the account page, under probably institution, there's something at the very bottom of the page that says emissions factors version. And so, it will say the year, and then if there's more than one update in a given year, it'll say, 2016 V1, 2016 V2. So you can easily see which version you're using. You can also choose to use an updated version, or for that matter, if you really wanted to, you could choose to stick with the outdated version so that you're not seeing your calculations change retroactively. So that's one cool new features of SIMAP is that you'll have a little bit more sort of version control, I guess I would say. We will continue to update the emissions factors as they become available to us. And in fact, again, one of the benefits of having a license fee and having that, hopefully we'll be able to do that more quickly, which will be great. But the users will have, it'll be, I think, a more transparent and easier to control which emissions factors you're using, which vintage of emissions factors you're using, as well as what actual emissions factors you're using.
Great. Excellent. We have a number of questions seeking information around Tier 2. But in general, they're just kind of a recap of the different tiers and functionalities. So basic, free, Tier 1, Tier 2. So cost, what's functionality? Yep.
Right. So let's go forward several slides. Past the question slide, I think there's an updated version of that chart. That might be the easiest way to cover this. Yeah. Okay. So for the launch next week, there's only two sets of functionality: basic, which is free, or Tier 1, which for non-signatories would be $350 a year. For signatories will be $210. And so this is the difference in functionality between basic and Tier 1. Basically, the basic version, which is free, is only good for 2 months. So, and it doesn't allow you to export your results or your emissions factors or your data. Of course, if you're using the basic version and you get an error message and you let us know, we will do what we can to fix the error message. But what we won't do is any additional support, the sort of support around methodology or data collection or clarification of how to do the inventory or how to use the tool. That comes with the Tier 1 license. So the only kind of customer support with the basic is if something is like literally not working. The ability to customize emissions factors, you don't have it with the basic free version. You do have it with the Tier 1 version. Not in this chart, but important, the ability to do the reports, including the second nature report. You don't have it with the basic version. You do have it with the Tier 1 version. And then the Tier 1 version also has the data review. What we will be pivoting to very rapidly, we've already started doing some work on it, and we're going to start focusing more on it once we're past this launch and the ASHE conference next week, is the set of Tier 2 functionality, which will be more expensive, but will have the ability to do the complete scope 3 analysis instead of the partial. It will have the projections and solutions, which allows you to sort of project out in the future your business as usual emissions, allows you to do sort of wedge graphs and analyze cost benefit of different mitigation strategies and figure out the net present value of those. So the projections and solutions stuff is really helpful if you're like updating your climate action plan, for example. And that will be part of that Tier 2 functionality down the road. The other thing that isn't in this chart, but which I should have said, is that both the carbon and the nitrogen you get in the basic or the Tier 1 or the Tier 2. It's just the way the tool works with those things changes. So hopefully that helps clarify. Obviously, happy to answer follow-up questions.
So there's a question to clarify the Tier 2. If that is if you purchase that, that includes the carbon functionality as well, carbon and nitrogen.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes. But that's not even available for purchase until next fall sometime, probably. Or
right.
Next winter.
Right. Okay. Great. So there's quite a few questions. We have about 6 minutes left. We're going to try to get through them all. This one is definitely interesting, and Jen, we've discussed it a little bit, but we're definitely going to need to figure this one out. So it's a community college district. They have 5 campuses. They currently report individually to us. So they're asking, how is SIMAP, can it roll up the campuses and individually in one dashboard, kind of one user, or does it have to be 5 individual kind of registrations for each campus?
Thank you for asking that. So that ability to kind of modularize, if you will, your report and have it be multiple campuses or locations, that will be part of tier 2 functionality as well. It is not in there currently. Currently, it works basically in the same way that the Excel tool did or Carbon Map did, which is there's like one set of inputs and one set of outputs that would all be kind of rolled up together.
Okay, so right now it's just individual,
Yes.
how the dashboard works. But
Yes.
so I can talk to, and we can discuss with, this is our, we have system or district signatories that include, so we're always kind of grappling with this. So
Navigating
we'll
that
continue
well.
to
So,
figure this out.
cool. I mean, the good news in terms of just doing the calculations piece is that for those folks, that will be, it will be a lot easier for them to do it in SIMAP and kind of cut it different ways, but have it all sort of integrated in one place when we launch the tier 2 functionality. But yeah, obviously the reporting piece to you guys is another question.
Okay. Next question, have you had any conversations with Energy Star portfolio manager to add them as a report or integration?
We've had, so we don't have specific plans right this second to do that, but we have been talking with the folks over at Portfolio Manager, and we'll continue to talk to them. We were sort of starting with Second Nature because this was like an area of greatest need in terms of like having that report and that data sharing. But yeah, EPA, DOE, HE, APA, and Akubo, we've been talking with everybody about, in the long run, our goal would be to connect with as many of those platforms as possible. And so we just haven't gotten this far in the conversation yet, or really in the sort of specifics of it, I guess I would say.
All right, great. I think you did cover this, it was in a slide, but how far back, how old campus carbon calculator spreadsheets, how far back can you then import up? What versions?
Oh, what version? Yeah, let me look at my notes so I'm not telling you the wrong thing, because it was on a slide.
I thought it was on a slide, yeah.
Not off the top of my head, but version 7, okay, yeah. And of course, I mean, well, I guess it depends on how old a version people are using, but within that Excel tool, there are ways to try to make it a little bit easier to move data from older versions to newer versions. So if you had something older than version 7, we could work with you to figure out how to get it from the older version into version 7 and then get it into SIMAP.
Okay. Excellent. We have a question about global warming potentials. And can you manipulate those?
Yes, those are customizable. Yes.
Okay. Great. And now a question about air travel. I'm just going to read it verbatim. If you customize your air travel emissions into international and domestic trips instead of student and staff trips with 2 sets of emission factors, will you need tier 1 functionality to support that? Or
yeah. Yes, okay. Because it will involve customizing emissions factors. Any customization, you would need tier 1 functionality to support it.
Okay, and that tier 1 or the tool right now has that capacity.
Yes.
Okay. Excellent. Well, I think that's all of the questions.
Cool. Look at that.
Right on time. But if there are further questions, I don't think we put our emails here, but contact us at Second Nature or Jen at UNH, and we're happy to answer any questions you may have about the partnership, around the tool, and how they will be interacting with each other. So I just want to thank everyone for joining. Thank Jen again and UNH for all their terrific work. And this is great. A lot of momentum moving towards ASHE next week.
Right on. Thank you. Thanks, Steve. I hope everyone has
All
a
right.
wonderful afternoon and a wonderful week. Look forward to seeing many of you, like you said, in San Antonio or soon.
Excellent. All right. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.